This is an interview that I did with Sarah Posner. She is the author of Unholy: Why White Evangelicals Worship at the Altar of Donald Trump. Hi, I'm Tracy Fessenden. I'm the co-director of the Recovering Truth Project, and I'm thrilled today to be in conversation with Sarah Posner. Sarah Posner is a journalism fellow in the Recovering Truth Project. She is editor most recently of Unholy: Why White Evangelicals Worship at the Altar of Donald Trump. She's also the author of a very important 2008 book called God's Prophets, Faith, Fraud, and the Republican Crusade for Values Voters. And Sarah's reporting has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Vice, Rolling Stone, The Nation, and many, many other outlets. And we are just thrilled to have you with us in the project. Sarah's beat is religion and politics, so her contributions could not be more timely. Sarah, I wanted to start by asking you to revisit a piece that you wrote for Huffington Post. It came out about 3 months ago in April. And at that time, the death toll from coronavirus in the US was about 2,500 people. Now, of course, we're at about 130,000 of our fellow citizens dead from coronavirus. And you wrote in that piece about evangelical churches and why they wanted folks to come back, why they wanted you to hug in church, and why they felt that the coronavirus restrictions were a religious freedom issue. So from where we stand now, what would you say about that piece? How would you unfold the implications of what you discovered in your reporting for the situation we face now?
Unfortunately, I think a lot of the people who were in the camp of churches should reopen back in April are still in that camp. In the time since I wrote that piece and now, between the time I wrote that piece and now, there's been a mini explosion of litigation claiming that churches and individuals' religious freedom was being violated by orders from state and local officials to stay at home, to restrict the size of gatherings, to restrict the size of indoor gatherings in particular. And this has continued even in the face of substantial medical evidence that being indoors together, particularly talking loudly, singing in particular, which is obviously something people do in church, can be, if somebody is infected, be a super spreader event. We've even had evidence of these super spreader events at choir practices, at churches, at funerals, events where people are tightly packed together and expelling a lot of the droplets and so forth that can spread the coronavirus. So, but I think that for a lot of evangelicals and a lot of Pentecostals and charismatics, if you believe that God will protect believers, if you believe that as a believer you're entitled to or will have supernatural healing, or if you don't fear death because you know that you will go to heaven, I think that this contributes to this kind of coronavirus denial, where you don't have to wear a mask because this is really not such a big deal, or we're going to listen to President Trump, who's going to claim that we have it under control, even though we don't. And so I think the notion that they are continuing to use the courts to press their claims of a violation of their constitutional rights is extremely disturbing, given what we're seeing now with the explosion of cases. I mean, they should be following the rules to protect their parishioners and the community, but I haven't seen a lot of drawing back on the claim that churches are essential and should be classified by the government as essential service.
What would have to change? I mean, what would have to happen to bring about a change in this mindset, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, we've seen cases of pastors catching COVID and dying. And I think we're starting to see some prominent evangelical pastors wear masks For example, Robert Jeffress, who's very close to President Trump, he pastors a megachurch, First Dallas in Texas. He recently hosted Vice President Pence for a celebration of the 4th of July, and they wore masks. However, the 100-person choir in Jeffress's church did not wear masks while they were singing. And after that event, BuzzFeed reported that there had been a little mini outbreak in Jeffress's church, and some of the musicians had come down with COVID. They were not there the day that Vice President Pence was there, but that just shows you, when they were in the choir, they were in the orchestra, that this can happen. So we're seeing a little bit of movement on the masks, but I think the notion that churches should be able to continue holding services because they're essential it continues to hold pretty tight.
And this seems to tell us something very important about religion in America. When we look at Europe and the countries that have gotten this under control, places we're not allowed to go now, right. When they look at America and look at our absolute failure to take the measures that we needed to when it would do the most good, I've never seen the divide more starkly visible between the U.S. and Europe than now. But what does religion have to do with that? And considering that it is churches that are often places where this resistance is voiced most loudly to masks, to restrictions, it's made a religious freedom issue. In a nutshell, what does this tell us about religion in America?
I think it tells us something about a particular brand of religion in America. I mean, I don't think that you're seeing this across the board. I think a lot of churches are remaining closed in deference to how vociferous this virus is, and to protect not only the members of the church, but the broader community. But I think in the evangelical world, and very particularly in the world of evangelicalism, where these Pentecostal and charismatic beliefs in magical, miraculous events and healing and restoration are prevalent, this is a fairly common kind of resistance. And I think when you layer on that a resentment of the government imposing any kind of restriction on their churches, even if it's for this very obviously needed public health reason. And you have a combination of anti-government grievance and magical thinking about who's going to avoid getting the virus or will recover from it or be healed from it. And it's a very kind of dangerous combination. And then when you layer on that these are strong allies of Trump, and that he, without much of the religious language, but also engages in that kind of magical thinking, always talking about how the virus is just going to go away or we're doing a great job. You're just living in this kind of fantasy land. And we have, something between 30 and 40% of the population who is sort of still backing Trump on all of this.
And what we've seen over the last week or so is that Trump has just pulled out the stops on his racist rhetoric. There's no attempt even to hide it now. How is that playing into this set of dynamics that you've identified that keep white evangelicals in thrall to Trump, even through a pandemic?
Yes. I think that for example, the Mount Rushmore speech on the day before the 4th of July, where he talked about our heritage and trying to protect America from these liberal fascists who are trying to impose their beliefs on you and change the very fabric of America and who we are. This is a very potent frame of reference for his white evangelical supporters. I think that people tend to think about Trump's fixation with the Confederate statues as some sort of weird anachronism that very few people buy into. But I think for his Christian rights supporters, it's part of a package wherein Trump recognizes their grievances about a lost America, where the government didn't try to force them to have certain kinds of admissions policies in their private Christian schools, where the government didn't try to force them to serve LGBTQ people in their businesses, where the government didn't try to force Hobby Lobby to provide contraception coverage in its employer healthcare plan. It has to do with race very much, but it has to do with other grievances as well. But this Trump as a vessel for their sense of a lost America that's been overtaken by political correctness and cultural Marxism, and now Antifa is the new bogeyman for this. People who are bringing mobs to the streets of America. So I think this speaks very much to his Christian right base, even though he didn't really make any specifically religious appeals in that speech. It's part of this package of Trump that has consolidated this base of white evangelicals and other white conservative Christians and what we would think of as white supremacists or white nationalists, but they come together in supporting Trump based on this sort of shared sense of grievance about America, them being left behind in this new America by mob rule.
Sarah Posner, thank you. We are so fortunate to be in conversation with you in this cataclysmic year. We look forward to talking further. Thank you.